expecting to talk to Spike primarily about the Sixers, but tush push is quite a topic. Obviously, Spike 2 to 6 every afternoon. Spike, Ike, and Jack, quite a show. And Spike joins us for the first time in a while on our program. Good morning, Spike.
Well, you guys only have me on when there's bad news. It's awful.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I enjoy your show, man. You guys are doing a heck of a job in the afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. You feel good? What, it's been about a year and a half now?
No, it hasn't even been a year, but good chat. Yeah,
that's great.
It's to be honest, it's amazing how much different it has felt every successive month. But it feels like comfortable now. I feel like we know what we're doing. So, I'm having a great time.
Man.
I feel like I haven't seen you in like 10 years, Spike. Although I saw you last week. I did.
I saw him yesterday.
Passing in the
or 2 days ago.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I miss you though. I really
miss
do.
You too, John. I miss you too, buddy.
Got the awkward stuff out of the way. Good Lord.
I desperately miss you, Spike.
All right, Spike.
All right, somebody stop this.
I'm going to try to rein this in. All right,
You
Spike.
Let's get us some alone time.
Let's start Joel, and then we'll get to the tush push.
Okay.
We heard your report. And report might not be the right word, but we heard your perspective that there's no surgery that can just fix this. So what is the path forward for the 76ers? And I'm not talking so much about the next month and whether they should tank. Like, is there a realistic path to get Joel Embiid back to being a historically great player again and dominating, or are those days very, very unlikely to ever occur again?
I would say they're unlikely only because of what we've seen recently and because every fix that has been proposed, or fixed for lack of a better word, because there isn't a fix. Like, just to be clear, and as I said, there's not an acute injury here. Is that his past injuries have caused a condition that a lot of other NBA players' bodies respond differently to. You know, Dwayne Wade played with, fluid in his knee a lot. He got it drained. He went back out there. But Joel is much bigger and has had much more trouble. So I would, if I were to guess, I would guess that the dominant days of Joel are over. But there are a lot of different outcomes you could see. You could see him never playing again, right? You could see like a John Wall thing where he comes back for 6 games and it doesn't work and then he's gone again. You could also see a world in which maybe he is a lesser player that tries to do less. Maybe he's a 20 or 24 minute player that is really effective. He's so skilled that I even think if his mind got there, I think he could be an effective player without having the physical, ability he's had before. But there are just so many different outcomes here, and I don't think a lot of them are super positive.
Is it fair to say that this is a pain tolerance thing with a guy who is not tolerant of pain?
I don't think that's a fair way to propose it. I think pain tolerance is one thing, but I think it's more about his ability to pivot, right? You can see the difference in he can run straight. It seems pretty easily, but his ability to cut and pivot and turn, I think that is just limited because it sort of buckles. He has been, I think he's in some ways a complicated player to talk about because I think all of the, he didn't put in the work in his body and all of those things are absolutely true. But I also think he's played through a lot of pain and come back early for the sake of trying to do stuff, but whether it's the broken faces or the knees or the hand or the Bell's palsy last year. So I don't necessarily think it's a pain tolerance issue. I think it's more of a, can this guy move in a way that can make him effective?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right, 2 things from last summer that stood out to me, and I've heard some of your opinion, but give greater context if you can. I get the sense that you think that him playing in the Olympics is an overrated topic from a causality standpoint, that this would have happened anyway. Is that a fair summation of your opinion, that people have made too much that he played and he screwed that up?
Yeah, I understand the instinct to think about that, but there is not an injury that happened during the Olympics that caused this. And rest for what it's worth. The non-surgical, radiation treatment plan is that when most players get better from this, it is playing on it and your body sort of adjusting to the new normal of not having that cushioning in there. That's what a meniscus does. It sort of cushions the joint. And what can happen is, and what happens with a lot of players, and Quentin Grimes has had similar surgery, and what happens with a lot of players is the bones around it harden, and you don't get the same sort of fluid in the knee and limited mobility from playing. So him resting all summer resting is the opposite of actually what he needs in the way that they were preparing to treat this and the way that other players treat it. So I understand the instinct to say, well, he shouldn't have played in the Olympics. But the Olympics, it's not like he played a full season. It was 10 games, and he wanted him playing basketball anyway. And a lot of the games he didn't even play. So, I get the anger, but I don't think it had a material effect on the position that we're in right now.
And what about, let's talk about the contracts play, because that was the other thing from the offseason. So, natural instinct is, how the hell does this get past Sixers doctors? So, do you think they didn't properly check him out, or is this like the Markelle Fultz thing where you sign up for a player thinking you're getting the player as he was, and then you find out afterwards, like, oh, Fultz's shoulder doesn't work, and oh, his head doesn't work. Like, do they truly find out afterwards that Joel has something that's so debilitating, and they could not discern that before giving him an extension while he had multiple years left on his deal?
So I want to be clear. It's not just Sixers doctors, because I think a lot of times it gets framed that way. It is multiple doctors in and out of the organization, and they knew what they were heading into. They were making an odds bet in that some players, and doctors will say this, that some players, and I don't think a limited number of players, some players, as they move forward with this, adjust and are able to play. Now, nobody thought he was going to play 82 games, but he's never played 82 games, right? So, and they didn't need him to. So if there's a world in which he can play 50 to 60 games, and, there's a week here or there where the knee flares up, which again happens with a lot of basketball players, then that is the bet they were making. The bet they were and I'm sure they knew this was a possibility, but there is no, I think it's hard to look at this bet and say that there is a sure bet either way, right? So, and then the extension, I think there's probably three ways to look at the extension. One, total mistake. Shouldn't have done it. Didn't need to do it. That is one option. The other option is if they are going to move forward with Joel Embiid and they want another high-level player to play with him, and again, in retrospect, it's very easy to say, well, Paul George stinks, blah, blah, blah. I wanted Paul George. A lot of people wanted Paul George. It was widely recognized that this was a good signing. There's no way that Embiid is going and recruiting Paul George, and Paul George is agreeing to come here if they do not appear committed to Embiid. Mm-hmm. So that is option two, is that if you're moving forward with them, you have to do it. Option three, and this is a little more nefarious, and I guess I'm just sort of speculating, is that the ownership was busy trying to push the city for a new arena, and that is a bad time to look cheap. And that ownership decided this is a bad risk, it is a worthwhile risk, because no matter what we're going to spend on Joel over the next 5 years, getting that building is worth more than all of them. We can't look bad right now. We can't have controversy. We can't have Embiid, publicly whining about not having an extension. And we certainly can't go into an off season and not at least attempt to make a big move, which, is connected to idea number two. So I don't think they went into it blindly. I would say it's like this. If you play blackjack and the dealer's showing a 6 and you have 2 10s, you bet, right? Every time. But sometimes the dealer flips over that other card and it's a 5 and they hit it once and it's a 10 and they have 21. And I'm not saying this is a bad beat like that is, but I'm saying sometimes you make a calculated decision and it just doesn't work. And I think that's where they're in. It's a bad decision, obviously.
It's going to cost them a half a decade. It's going to cost.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's necessarily
true. It certainly may. I'll say that.
The specifics.
Well, the process didn't cost them half a decade.
No, but climbing out of these contracts, it's like I remember one of Rhea's points last year, and I was against it. But to her credit, one of Rhea's points was, listen, you're probably not going to win a title with Joel, So trade him now while you can for 4 draft picks and 3 pick swaps, and they would be set up in a different way moving forward. Had they made that
2 years ago, I wanted to trade him. Yeah, I mean that's just
absolutely.
and that option is gone. Like you can't get all that now.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But 2 years ago, and I agree with you. And that's all you need to do is look at the reaction to the Luka Doncic trade. And they essentially made that decision, right? They said, we don't care that this guy took us to the finals last year. We don't care how good he is. We see his body. We see his work ethic. We're selling high. Now, they didn't make a great trade.
It was pretty bad.
That said, their fans want to murder them.
Yeah.
So Nico Harrison, the GM of the Mavericks, is getting death threats.
But the difference is, Spike, he actually did take them to the finals. There is a bit of a difference.
Yeah, that's right. And is not as injury prone.
Yes, but Embiid has also was an MVP, and the 2 years prior was runner-up of the MVP. Like, I understand. I agree with you conceptually. Like, I understand all sides of this. But I think to a certain degree, we are downplaying how good he was and how much he did play for a 5-year stretch. Like, that 5-year stretch didn't look any different as far as games played than Giannis or Luka. He was right around 65 games every year, which is what a lot of NBA stars play. Now, again, a bad bet. It's like they made a bet that was bad and could cripple them for a long time. But I don't think the bet was, like, I agreed with it at the time, right? Yeah. And I was shaky on it, and I agreed with it. But I said, what is our better chance of winning a championship right now? It isn't one, so I guess I get it. You know?
So, Spike, again, clarity on the injury this is just meniscal tears that have now been scoped out to where he has cushioning that is no longer there, and that's the problem, and that's why he's wearing the huge knee brace?
So it could be a number of different things. The initial cause, now he's had 4 separate injuries on that knee. 2 of them have been meniscal tears, and he has had meniscectomies both times. So they didn't repair it like they did with Jared McCain.
Yeah.
And sometimes people paint that as a decision. Sometimes it's not always a decision, and they don't know until they go in there whether they can repair it or not, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So he had 2 of those. I believe he had a bone bruise on the knee, and I believe he had a hyperextension on the knee. So one of the problems is the meniscus isn't there, so there's a lack of cushioning, and there's sort of an arthritic, I think, overall sense that the knee isn't going to get better. The best you can do, it could get better from the absolute current state, but it isn't an acute injury that you can fix.
Right.
Then there's been some other talk, and I don't know if they find this out in the imaging, that there's, cartilage damage, in which case, again, all of those surgeries, whether it's microfracture, which they hardly do anymore because it doesn't have a very high success rate.
Yeah, it didn't work.
They've talked about this sort of weird hip surgery where you sort of break your hip bones and they change your gait so there's less pressure on the knee. But that's
holy cow!
Yeah,
for him.
And by the way,
that's what Ben Davis needed to be a good catcher.
That's right.
He needed a lot more than that.
A lot more than
that. That's a year recovery, and it's a year recovery with no assurance that it's going to change anything. There's some like radiation therapies they can talk about that have a shorter return time, but microfracture. Mara Stoudemire had that. Allen Houston had that. I think Brandon Graham had it early in his career. You poke little holes in the bone, and what the bone sometimes does is regenerates a cartilage-like substance that can act in place of it. But they haven't done it very much often because it doesn't have as a high success rate. The last option, which in my understanding from talking to people is not an option for Embiid, is the meniscus replacement, which Lonzo Ball did. But Embiid is much bigger than Lonzo Ball. He's older than Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball was out for 2 years and still is the shell of a player that he was, and they're not even sure that'll hold up for him. So I don't think the meniscus replacement is an option for Embiid.
Good God.
Dr.
Right.
Delco.
Spike, you have really laid it on in a informative way, but also a way that doesn't make me feel any better.
Fun stuff from Spike.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
All right, Spike, final thing here. Twitter poll question of the day. It's brought to us by Armin Chevrolet. Proud to again be Pennsylvania's #1 Chevrolet EV dealer, now in stock, the Equinox Blazer and Silverado EVs. Together, let's drive. ArminChevy.com. Poll question: Better show, WIP Morning Show, WIP Afternoon Show. Hold on. That's hold on. Hold on.
Sorry.
That's not our question.
Okay.
It's not our question.
Okay.
We didn't want to.
We don't even need to ask.
Nah.
Right.
All right. Poll. Spike. Here's the poll. Should the NFL ban the tush push? So me and Ben are yes. John, James, and Rhea are no. What says Spike Eskin?
I would say it is a fair and smart thing to ban the tush push, even if it is a disadvantage for the Eagles. I think every time I watch it, I wait for somebody to break their neck. I don't think overall it's if you're a casual viewer or a non-Eagles fan, I just don't think there's any drama behind the play. And I think what they've seen and the reason is probably less about the Eagles now and more that other teams are doing it. And it's one thing if one team is doing it, but it's another thing if the whole league on 3rd and 1 is having their quarterback pushed forward by the tight end or a running back or something. So I would be fine with them banning it.
Spike, I salute you. Not that I want it gone, but I think it should be from a league standpoint. I agree with you. Hey, Spike, all jokes aside. Yeah, go ahead.
I also feel bad for the Jalen Hurts fantasy owners who are going to lose about 12 touchdowns a year.
That's a valid point,
Well,
too.
I'll tell you what, Spike. Saquon Barkley might have lost an MVP because of it. If he has 7 to 9 more touchdowns, he might have won. He might have won the MVP. I'm saying I'm serious about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, how many times was he stopped at the 1 this year?
Tons.
Like 13 times, I think. Some outrageous number. So, yeah.
Spike, stay well, man. Your show is great. Keep it rolling, and we enjoy having you on. Thanks, bud.